got a fantastic interview for you guys today. You might recognize him, Vice President Al Gore at Rebel headquarters. Great to have you here.
Good to be here.
I remember when Rebel headquarters used to be at your place.
Well, that's true, and I remember when your Rebel headquarters used to be a couple blocks from here.
That's right, that's right. The movie is coming out tomorrow. You're not only the former vice president, you're also the star of an inconvenient sequel, Truth to Power, let alone all the other accolades. So I saw it in the premiere, and it's powerful, it's moving. Obviously, I want to talk to you about climate change.
Yeah.
We'll talk about other issues as well, but let's start on climate change. So as I look at that, there was a couple of scenes that I thought were overwhelming in being convincing that this is happening. This is happening. Yeah. But you know what's happening out there. Most of the folks watching get it. Most of the American people get it. 60, 70%, it's getting into that range. But there's still the holdouts who go, I don't get it. There's snow in the winter. So what is the most compelling evidence that you would present to them if you had 1 minute, 2 minutes with them to convince them that it's actually happening?
Well, every night on the TV news now is like a nature hike through the book of Revelation, and all you really need to do is to connect the dots, even if the mainstream media doesn't want to do it for you. The hottest year ever measured with instruments was last year. The second hottest was the year before that. The third hottest the year before that. It's really overwhelming now. Yeah, and just in the last 7 years, the U.S. has had 11 once-in-a-thousand-year events. And that pattern is showing up. They even lowballed it a little bit, to tell you the truth, because they're culturally conservative. That should make us all pay careful attention to what they're saying would happen in the future if we did not get this under control.
Well, so I watched An Inconvenient Truth 11 years ago, and despite the fact that I was already well on the way there, I don't know if you remember from our previous conversations, in the 80s and 90s, I wasn't sold. And you know what happened since then? A lot of data.
Yeah.
So you were right, you had seen the data already and you thought that it was a pattern that was convincing, and that turned out to be true. But now, in the 11 years since Inconvenient Truth, the numbers are overwhelming. You know, as you point out, and there's a powerful scene in the movie with the bell curve, with the red, white, and blue, and the warm temperatures, and how it moves. That right there, that scene is enough. I wish every American could see that scene, just those couple of minutes, and I think that would do it. But yet, one more thing on the skeptics. They'll say, I see the big storms, but come on, when I was a kid, we had storms too. So you say connect the dots, but it's storms, we had storms. What do you mean connect the dots?
Well, the persistent levels of denial among a smaller and smaller minority didn't occur in a vacuum. In Tennessee, there's an old saying, if you see a turtle on top of a fence post, you can be pretty sure it didn't get there by itself. And these levels of denial didn't occur by themselves. The large carbon polluters, the Koch brothers, ExxonMobil, and some others, have spent huge amounts of money, over $1 billion, in using the playbook that was written by the tobacco companies years ago. You'll remember when the doctors connected smoking cigarettes to lung cancer and other diseases of the lung and heart. The tobacco companies hired actors and dressed them up as doctors, put them in front of cameras to say in TV ads all over the airwaves, hi, I'm a doctor. You don't have to worry about any of these problems. And 100 million people died during the 40 years that they delayed the truth that was inconvenient for them. Well, the carbon polluters have hired the same PR firms. There's an amazing book called The Merchants of Doubt that tells this story, documents it thoroughly. They have used the same tactics. And they've used it also to divide Americans by labeling it kind of a partisan issue when it really isn't. It has nothing to do with partisanship. But they have tried to create this climate denial in order to squeeze more profits out of their business plans, which rely on being able to continue to use the sky as an open sewer for 110 million tons of man-made global warming pollution every day. The cumulative amount of man-made global warming pollution that's up there now traps as much extra heat energy in the atmosphere as would be released by 400,000 Hiroshima-class atomic bombs exploding every day. Now, it's a big planet, but that's an enormous amount of energy, and that's why the temperatures are going up. Most of that heat energy is going into the oceans, by the way, and that's disrupting the water cycle by loading a lot more water vapor coming off the oceans into the sky. The atmospheric rivers take it over the land, and that's why we have these so-called rain bombs now with these record downpours and mudslides and floods. And then between the downpours, the extra heat also makes the droughts start more quickly and go deeper and last longer. And of course, it's melting the ice, and that's why you have sunny day flooding in Miami and Galveston and Norfolk and Fort Lauderdale and Annapolis and worse still in Bangladesh and the Maldives, and I won't go on with the list. But we are largely a coastal species, and the threat of losing coastal towns and cities all over the world is one of many of these problems. And of course, then, I don't want to belabor this, but think about the Zika virus and the other tropical diseases that were never known in this country before. And yes, air travel's had something to do with spreading it, but the climate changes have changed the areas where these diseases take root and become endemic. And when doctors say for the first time in history that women in parts of South and Central America don't get pregnant for 2 years, that ought to set off alarm bells that have nothing to do with politics or partisanship. When American women are told for the first time in history to avoid certain parts of the United States because of these horrible birth defects that can be carried with this virus, it's just all these things together are just overwhelming. But you can't shut down because now we have the solutions. We can solve it.
So there's so many parts of the movie that resonate with me that you alluded to there. I lived in Miami for 3 years, and the part of the movie where Miami's flooded and you're in your big boots, that was right around the corner from where I live.
No kidding.
And I go back to Miami every year because I think it's not going to exist. And so I swear to God, I go every year to soak it in while it's still around. And so it's not something in the future. It's right now. And when I go, I see more flooding and I see more flooding. And to the point about the extreme storms and the droughts, that confuses people. They say, how can it be? But there was a great explanation in the movie of why the heat picks up the moisture from the ocean and creates the storms, but also picks up the moisture from the land and creates the droughts. So that's why I just thought it was very powerful in that sense. And I'm going to go to a part of the trailer in a second because there's at least a point that I want to make. But you mentioned your opponents there, the people who are trying to stop people from understanding this. So I think that a lot of the media treats them as genuine. Meaning, oh, here are these honorable gentlemen who are Republican senators from across the country who earnestly don't believe the science or they think there's a dispute in the science. Do you think they are genuine actors, or do you think that there's systemic corruption that leads to their position?
Oh, I mean, I think it's a blend of both, and I'm sure some of them really believe what they're saying. One of the greatest investigative journalists in history over a century ago, Upton Sinclair, once wrote, "It's difficult to get a man to understand something if his income depends upon him not understanding it. You substitute campaign contributions and lobbying gifts for income, it is income in a way, then that's part of the explanation. But I know for a dead certain fact, Jen, because I served with some of these guys and gals, I know that some of them actually do understand that their positions have been overtaken by unassailable evidence, and they are actually privately trying to figure out how to climb back off the end of the long limb they're on. That is a fact. And some of them are beginning to change now. Not enough yet, but I think the reaction to Trump is actually in some ways kind of making it easier for some of them to change their position. In the House, there's something called the Noah's Ark caucus now. And it refers not only to the biblical deluge, but also the fact that they can only come by twos. In order to join, you have to have one Democrat and one Republican together. So a lot of Republicans are now joining that. And back to Miami for a moment. The mayor of Miami is a Republican. And he spoke up and said, hey, this has nothing to do with politics. We got a crisis on our hands. We got to solve it.
Yeah, let alone Georgetown, Texas mayor, which is a character in the movie. Speaking of which, because you just touched on both of those things, let's show you a really quick version of the trailer here, and then I want to ask you something about it. Let's watch.
It's supposed to be 70 degrees today. It's freezing here. Speaking of global warming, we need some global warming. It's freezing.
The most criticized scene in the movie An Inconvenient Truth was showing that the combination of sea level rise and storm surge would flood the 9/11 memorial site. And people said, what a terrible exaggeration.
Hurricane Sandy slammed into New York City last night, flooding the World Trade Center site.
Storms get stronger and more destructive. Watch the water splash off the city.
It's time to put America first. That includes a promise to cancel billions in climate change spending. Our plan will end the EPA.
This is our home.
Okay. So now you've done so many things to fight back on this issue, and you've done the Climate Reality Project, which you're still doing, which we've talked about. You've trained thousands of people. I don't know if you've gotten to millions yet.
No, over 12,000.
Yeah, and all the things that you did as vice president in the government, et cetera. But when you see that and you see the opposition has gained the mantle of power and is blocking everything that could help climate change, including getting out of the Paris Accords, which is devastating. Look, I did the math. You're younger than Bernie Sanders. You're younger than Joe Biden.
Here we go.
Younger than Joe Biden, younger than Hillary Clinton, and about the same age, maybe a year older, about a year older than Elizabeth Warren. So, and you already won an election. Can I just say, look, I don't know that anybody's ever asked you this, and I don't know if it's right to or not, but you didn't just win the popular vote. According to an entire recount of Florida, you won the Electoral College. So first of all, I'm going to ask a funny question. Do you concede that? Do you concede that you actually won the Electoral College as well?
Well, publicly, I have accepted the responsibility of not challenging the legitimacy of the outcome. But I hear what you're saying. I think people have by now understand what happened, and I wish the Supreme Court had seen it differently.
Yeah. All right. So that is so clear. If you haven't seen it, guys, go Google the articles about the recount of the entire state of Florida that the newspapers did afterwards. So it's devastating, but you're still young.
Yeah.
So
69 is the new 68.
So is there any chance that you think, well, look, the most effective way to do this is through government, and you get back in the saddle?
Well, you know, this might be as good a place as any to no.
For a second
I joke in the movie that I am a recovering politician, and the longer I go without a relapse, the less likely one becomes. I'm grateful to have found other ways to serve the public interest, and it feels to me like I'm doing what I should be doing right now.
Okay, that wasn't a no. So let me ask one more thing. Forget running for president. I tried. I didn't know you at all, but I wrote articles saying you should do it in 2004. I wrote articles you should do it in 2008. And then after I knew you in 2016. Okay, so let's say I'm past it. But if a real progressive wins and says, "I want you to be the anti-Rex Tillerson," the other guys picked the CEO of ExxonMobil. Yeah. That puts all this carbon into the air. I want you to come clean it up. And boy, as I see John Kerry in the movie, in the Paris Accords, I think that would be amazing for you to do. Is there a possibility that you would do that?
No, no, I would not do that. But you know, you mentioned John Kerry. It's true, he did an amazing job as Secretary of State. And you know, we went to the Senate on the same day, and I'll tell you, our friendship and partnership over the years was invaluable as we worked together in Paris, and I really admire the job he did.
All right, that was a clear answer. So let's go to Trump. So on a scale of 1 to 10, how's he doing on the issue of climate change? 1 being miserable, 10 being great.
-1. I mean, really, how could it be worse? I mean, I thought there was a chance that he would come to his senses on the issue, but I was very wrong. And he surrounded himself with this rogues gallery of climate deniers, and he's doing as bad as anyone could possibly do.
When you went to Trump Tower to talk to him, what did he say that made you think, like, maybe? Because you had a tiny bit of hope, not a lot, but a little bit there.
Yeah, no, I actually thought there was a real chance that he would, and I've protected the privacy of the conversations I've had with him, and it didn't stop with that one in Trump Tower. I've had no conversations since his decision on Paris. I don't think there's any reason to continue them. But you've seen articles where business people who've dealt with him will tell you that one-on-one, he's very cordial, and you can come away with the impression that he's open to what you're saying. And I did think there was a chance that he would change. And I thought there was a point where he really had changed a few weeks before his decision on Paris, but the right wing and the carbon polluters, I believe, got to him and locked him in place.
Okay, how about overall, scale of 1 to 10 for his administration so far?
Same score. I mean, I don't know. Well, it could be worse. It's a blend of malevolence and incompetence, and the latter has limited some of the damage that he might otherwise want to do.
Okay, so that's clear. -1. Okay, but I've never seen anything like this. I don't know if anybody's ever seen anything like this. I mean, when he fires Comey, then he talks about firing his attorney general while his attorney general is still in office, pressuring him to resign. I've never seen that. Scaramucci comes out yesterday or last night and says Reince Priebus should be investigated by the FBI. Once the White House communications director, although was chief of staff. Even Nixon didn't do it publicly like this. This is amazing. So what do we do with a problem like Trump? So given that this is unprecedented, I know with Democrats, I presume if he fires Mueller are going to say, hey, we got to take action right now. Do you think the Republicans will take action, and what would the action be? Would it be impeachment? What would you do? What could we do if he fires Mueller?
Well, for me, the biggest problem is that all these things are distractions from what the president ought to be doing. Nothing's getting done. Certainly nothing good is getting done. And every day it's a new set of tweets, a new set of distractions, and that's one of the biggest tragedies of this whole show, the reality show that's going on there. Now, as for the investigation and all the suspicions people have, I'm going to leave that to Robert Mueller. I think the country is extremely fortunate to have an independent counsel who has the complete respect of just about everybody I've heard comment on it in both political parties. I mean, it's a privilege for us as Americans to have somebody like that in charge. And let's say that the investigation finds out that he didn't do anything wrong. There wasn't collusion. There wasn't. Because it's Mueller, I would be able to accept that because I trust the guy. He has integrity. By the same token, if he comes to the opposite conclusion, I think that conclusion will also be accepted. And I think it's very interesting that the Republican senators who have been unnaturally quiet and acquiescent in the face of all these things Trump has been doing, all of a sudden when he attacks Sessions, who they served with, and I was in the Senate and I know the importance of camaraderie when it's established there, they're now drawing a red line. And I think that my best guess is that the next few months may be ones that are filled with challenges for our democracy, and we should gird ourselves for it. I'm going to wait, as I said, for what Mueller's investigation uncovers. I feel confident that he will be allowed to continue. I think the Senate will protect him, and then we'll see where it goes from there.
All right, guys, stay right here. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to do the top of the show with Vice President Gore. I'm going to talk more about climate change and what we can do to fix the situation. So we'll be right back in 30 seconds. Turks. I'm your host, Jake Huger. We were just here doing an interview with Vice President Al Gore. He's still here. Let's do a whole segment together. It's amazing. It's like the old days when we were on current TV.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Wasn't that an amazing team? 2012 elections. Us two, Elliot Spitzer, Jennifer Granholm, Michael Schur.
It was a great team. You were the host. You were the ringleader, and I was happy to be in your band.
It's amazing. I've lived a life. All right. So thank you for being here. I really appreciate it. And I want to dive into some of the issues that are going on.
Great.
Okay. So California earlier this week passed cap and trade.
Yeah.
So now that's actually an extension of an earlier legislation. It was supposed to go to 2020, but we're almost there. So they extended it to 2030.
Yeah.
And it was a really nice moment. If you guys didn't see, Jerry Brown and Arnold Schwarzenegger were together, and they raised each other's hands because Schwarzenegger is on the right side of that issue.
Yeah.
And so tell us what that cap and trade does in California and why it's so important.
Well, first of all, it makes Jerry Brown one of the preeminent leaders on this issue in the world. I admire Jerry a lot, and I know there was a little criticism of this detail or that detail, and I get it, but wow, to be able to accomplish that is amazing. And he got 8 Republican members of the legislature, some from very conservative districts, and several Republican governors of other states endorsed the legislation. So what it does is put a price on carbon through the cap and trade mechanism. It greatly benefits Canada as well because Ontario has joined. Quebec has already joined. Ontario is about to. Mexico. 3 weeks ago, I was in Australia, and I've worked with Chair. I took 4 letters from him to the premiers of the 4 largest states in Australia. The same deal there. They got a federal government that doesn't have its act together, but the state governments have a lot of the levers of power. So California is really kind of leading the way in the U.S., but you got a lot of other states too. So it's a very important accomplishment.
Is cap and trade the right way to tackle this issue?
You know, if I had my druthers, I would have a tax on carbon, and cap and trade and regulations like requiring a certain percentage from renewables going up each year. But the resistance to a tax of any kind, of course, because of the way the ideological debate has been shaped, makes it easier in most jurisdictions to go for the indirect price on carbon, which cap and trade is. Even in China, by the way. I have a close friend there, Xie Jinhua, who is their top climate guy who works for Xi Jinping. They floated a carbon tax in China, and it met with a lot of resistance from the regional industrial leaders. Of course, it's a dictatorship, but not totally. They pay attention to opinion. So they diverted to a cap and trade there as well. Sweden, probably doing the best job of any country, has both cap and trade and a carbon tax. And eventually, I hope we will have a carbon tax. A revenue neutral carbon tax is something I've supported for more than 25 years. But when I realized that was an almost impossible sell, I said, okay, second best is cap and trade. Let's do that. The first President Bush had done that to stop sulfur dioxide and help cure acid rain, and it worked better than a lot of us expected it would. So let's say, well, let's do that. That's when we started this effort, and the Republican authors of the first cap and trade plan immediately switched and said, no, you're for it, now we're against it. Not saying that to me, but to the Democrats who were there then.
Well, where have I seen that movie before? The Heritage Foundation proposed a health care
there you go, same thing.
Right, and once the Democrats—
Good catch.
Right, say they're in favor of it, all of a sudden they're not. Which actually then leads to a hot issue also in California. So very recently they decided to pass single payer in the California Senate, but couldn't quite get it done in the Assembly. Curious to your take on the issue: single payer, Medicare for all. What's your stance on this?
Well, throughout my career in government back in the day, I was kind of skeptical about single payer. I thought the hybrid system, public-private, could work. Starting in 2002, I came to the conclusion that we should go to single payer. Medicare for all would be an easy way to do it. I just think that the current system, I mean, I'm all for Obamacare, AHCA, as it's called. But the Republicans are trying to undermine that, and when and if we get to the point where we have to rework it again, I would be strongly in favor of going to single payer.
All right, great. And then I want to play you a clip from Lindsey Graham today because he said something very interesting about the Mueller investigation.
Okay.
So let's take a look at that and then react. This happened just today.
There will be no confirmation hearing for a new attorney general in 2017. If Jeff Sessions is fired, there will be holy hell to pay. Any effort to go after Mueller could be the beginning of the end of the Trump presidency, unless Mueller did something wrong.
Okay, so those are very strong words.
Yeah, very. Yeah.
What's your level of faith that the Republican senators will follow through on that threat if he fires Mueller?
Well, you know, Lindsey Graham is sometimes out over his skis where the rest of the Republican caucus is concerned, but the chairman of the Judiciary Committee, Chuck Grassley, put out a tweet just the day before saying he's not going to have any hearings on any new attorney general this year. Ben Sass of Nebraska put out a tweet saying, if you're thinking about a recess appointment to replace Sessions, forget about it, directed at Trump. And I've heard interviews with quite a few Republican senators who are all saying similar things. So my guess is that this sentiment expressed by Lindsey Graham is not just him, or not just him and John McCain. I think it appears to be representative of what the Republicans in the Senate generally are thinking and saying.
All right, one last question for you, and it is about the Democratic Party.
Yeah.
So we talked about some of the issues, climate change, single payer. Some are counseling. I read an article the other day, the Blue Dog Democrats are back, and they're saying let's go to the center, and that's why we're losing. And they are losing. They've lost the House, the Senate, the White House, the Supreme Court, and 69 out of 99 state legislatures. Now, of course, there's the progressive wing saying, no, let's fight for the positions we believe in, and let's go stronger in that direction. What do you make of that? Which direction do you think they should go?
Well, you know, when I ran this the last time for president, my slogan was for the people, not the powerful, and a lot of people criticized that as leaning too far toward the progressive side. But it just seems to me, with rising inequality in incomes and net worths, and also the inequality of political power, our democracy's been hacked by big money long before the Russians hacked it. And we need to right the ship. We need to restore American democracy, and I think the way to do it is to really go to the people and say, we're for you, and we're not gonna to bend to the will of these wealthy and powerful poobahs. You know, Bernie Sanders' campaign, whether you agree with his agenda or not, just looking at the mechanics of it, he accomplished something that I think is really significant beyond politics and ideology. He proved that it now is possible in 2016, 2017, 2018, 2020 to run a very credible, potentially winning campaign without taking any special interest money, any big fat cat contributions, just going out on the internet and trying to motivate the average citizens of this country to finance the campaign with small donations. That's the way it should be. And I think that the internet and social media have now evolved to the point where that really is possible. And that possibility gives me tremendous hope that we may be able to rekindle the spirit of America and reinvigorate the way our democracy is intended to operate. And that's best done by going to the people with solutions that speak to them, and don't, you know, bend over to be so careful with all these powerful special interests.
Correct me if I'm wrong, the first bill you ever introduced was about getting money out of politics?
Yeah, I mean, every time when I was first elected to the House of Representatives, I introduced legislation to have 100% federal funding of all federal elections. It was part of the platform in every campaign I ran in the House, in the Senate, both times I ran for president. I was never really attacked on it, Cenk, because they couldn't get people to believe that I would propose such a thing. But I really believe that's one of the secrets. Now, it's hard to get something like that passed. I'm not naive about it. But I really do think that getting big money out of politics is absolutely essential to save the America that we know and love.
I thought I was early on it, but you introduced that bill when?
1977.
So you might have figured out things a little quicker than, and
well,
not only me, but the rest of the country.
I'm a lot older than you.
So climate change, money in politics, all these issues, you're way out ahead. I hope that people learn from that. And as one last thing, as I watched the movie, this is for you guys, I kept thinking, how many times does the guy have to be proven right before you go, maybe I should listen to him, right?
Did I mention the website, Jing?
I don't think you did.
Inconvenientsequel.com. You can buy advance tickets. It opens in Los Angeles this Friday, tomorrow, and New York. And then a week from tomorrow, August 4th, it opens wide all across the country. And you got viewers around the world. This movie is going to be playing in countries around the world. And use your voice, use your vote, use your choices in life. Be a part of the solutions and go to see this movie, An Inconvenient Sequel, Truth to Power.
Yes, so the other thing is get involved. Climate Reality Project, and the first thing to do in getting involved is actually seeing what's going on. If you didn't see Inconvenient Truth, go back, see Inconvenient Truth, and then go see Inconvenient Sequel, and it's stark.
Thank you.
Yes.
People come away hopeful. They come away hopeful, but also with an increased sense of urgency.
Yeah, and there was literally a couple of times where I gasped. You know, the scene with the station in Greenland.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And then the next year they come back and the ice is gone, and I was like, so Inconvenient Sequel, check it out. Vice President Gore, thank you so much for being here.
Chuck.
Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, we'll be right back. We got the rest of the show for you guys. All right, back on our Young Turks. What a day, what a crazy day. I mean, it's a crazy day in 1,000 different ways. We got just had Vice President Al Gore in the studio, and the things that Scaramucci has said is unbelievable. It's unbelievable. So I'm gonna have that for you in the next segment. But I do want to touch on two things here that are related, and it relates to the Russian investigations, and also what are the Republicans actually gonna do about it. So let me tell you those two stories right now. So, a couple of days ago on the show, I asked the question of what will the Republicans do? There will be a moment of truth for them if Donald Trump actually follows through and fires Sessions and Mueller. Because if he does that and they let him do it, there is some chance that we have lost our checks and balances and what we know to be America. That is not an overstatement. Because if you are under investigation and you're allowed to fire anyone who investigates you, well, that is not our form of government. Our form of government is that the three branches are supposed to check one another, not let the executive branch do whatever they want, whether it's within the law or not within the law. So we now have our first answer as to what Republicans are going to do if we get to that moment of truth. So let me show you Lindsey Graham from South Carolina, Republican senator.
You know, the president has the right to fire anybody in his cabinet. As a human being, I think he should show some respect for Jeff Sessions as a person. Jeff Sessions was the most loyal supporter of Donald Trump. He's a rock-solid conservative. But the reason I like him so much is I often disagree with him, but I've never believed that he was a man who lacks integrity or sense of fair play. This effort to basically marginalize and humiliate the Attorney General is not going over well in the Senate. I don't think it's going over well in the conservative world. If you believe Jeff Sessions should be fired, use the power you have and accept the consequences.
Damn, accept the consequences. So those are strong words there by Lindsey Graham. They're about to get stronger. Wait till you see the second video. So look, this is very interesting development. You're not going to be surprised that Democrats, of course, agree. Senator Blumenthal, who is Democrat, said firing Mueller would, quote, precipitate a firestorm that would be unprecedented in proportions. So, okay, but you really got to take the actual actions. And now it is important to see that conservative media, ranging from Fox News to Breitbart, beginning to say, hey, firing Jeff Sessions is a terrible idea, don't do it. The congressional Republicans have expressed strong support for former FBI Director Robert Mueller. They've also rallied around Sessions, so now you're seeing the legislators. Okay, but what are you actually going to do about it? That brings us to the second thing Lindsey Graham said.
There will be no confirmation hearing for a new Attorney General in 2017. If Jeff Sessions is fired, there will be holy hell to pay. Any effort to go after Mueller could be the beginning of the end of the Trump presidency, unless Mueller did something wrong.
Now we're having a conversation. So he's saying, we're not confirming anyone else. Jeff Sessions is your Attorney General. You want to fire him? Fire him, face the consequences, but we're not putting in a new Attorney General. And then the second comment is even stronger. You fire Mueller and it is the beginning of the end for you. That is a Republican senator from South Carolina. Now, he's not the end all be all, and he has tweaked Donald Trump more often than other Republican senators, but now Chuck Grassley, Ben Sasse from Nebraska, and others are coming out and saying, yeah, no. That's a terrible idea to fire Sessions, and if you fire Mueller, game on. And you know Republicans, you never know. They could circle the wagons and protect him anyway, but it will definitely be their moment of truth, because if you let him fire Mueller, that means he can do anything he wants. Forget past crimes, he can do future crimes, and he just put his cronies in and he'll never be held accountable. Again, not our system of government, but it's not just words. Lindsey Graham also took some action. So let me go to the Associated Press for this. Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina is working on legislation that would block the firing of special counsels without judicial review. Now, they should pass that immediately, and if you believe in American democracy, that is exactly the right law, and I don't say that about the legislation the Republicans offer very often. Well, that one is absolutely right. So you block Trump from being able to fire the person who's actually investigating him. If they don't do that and he does fire him, and maybe that's why Trump's in a bit of a panic here. He's got to go right now to fire these people. Now, if you didn't do it, would you be in that same panic? Or would you think, what's the difference? They can investigate, and if they get out of hand, then my Republican senators will agree with me that they're going in the wrong direction. But if you have something to cover up, you're gonna wanna fire those guys before they pass this legislation. And now they're saying, well, if you do, the beginning of the end. We'll see. Interesting times. Okay, now, speaking of the heart of the issue, there's more action that Congress is taking. This is Republicans holding people accountable. Wow, okay. Now, the Congress is considering new sanctions on Russia. They're not as tough as the ones that were passed in the Obama administration, but they would definitely affect the Russian economy. And Vladimir Putin, of course, is furious about it. And so it's very interesting to see which way Congress is going to go, and then, of course, the White House. Is Donald Trump going to pretend to be in favor of sanctions? But you know what? If he signs the bill, then you're not pretending anymore. Then you pass the sanctions, and I go, hey, you know what? Okay, maybe he'll change later, but for the moment being, he didn't lift the sanctions. That's what Russia wanted most, and that's what we thought the deal was, right? So let's go find out together. Well, Reuters reporting US President Donald Trump could veto pending legislation that would slap new sanctions on Russia. He says, in order to push for a tougher deal. No, but wait. We have these sanctions that you have been fighting against the entire time. Now you claim you want to make it tougher. Well, we go to our new friend Anthony Scaramucci, and he says he may veto the sanctions and negotiate an even tougher deal against the Russians. Okay, you say that, but then Reuters follows up with the idea of Trump wanting to strengthen the sanctions drew skepticism in Congress because his administration had spent weeks lobbying for a weaker bill. It's not like we can't see that. Your guys are all over Congress going, don't do the sanctions. And if you're gonna do the sanctions, make it much weaker. Now when you say, I'm gonna veto the sanctions bill if they pass it all the way through Congress, you say, because I'd like them to be tougher. We know you're lying. You lied in public. All the congressmen and all the senators know you're lying because you just told them a couple of days ago that you want the sanctions to be weaker. Now pretending that you want them to be tougher is preposterous, but it gets worse because Reuters explains the White House has said that Trump is still evaluating the bill and supported strong sanctions against Russia. However, Trump can impose new sanctions at any time through an executive order. So wait a minute, if you wanted tougher sanctions, why don't you just do them now? You can pass the bill and then go, you know what, on top of that, here's an executive order with tougher sanctions on Russia. The reality is you don't want those sanctions, you can't have those sanctions, and you're risking your entire political career and your administration to possibly veto this bill because you've got to deal with the Russians. It's the most obvious thing in the world. Any person who doesn't have a deal with the Russians would think, what am I gonna endanger my entire administration? These guys are breathing down my neck. There's a special counsel, there's these investigators. If in the middle of all this, I veto a bill that the sanctions on Russia for meddling in our election, my own intelligence agencies, the guys I appointed, Dan Coats, Mike Pompeo, head of the CIA, director of national intelligence, telling me there is no doubt and no dissent Russia interfered with our elections. Why on God's green earth would you defy your own party who's actually pushing this forward, and credit to the Republicans for doing so. Of course, the Democrats agree, but the Republicans doing this despite a Republican president opposed to it, give them credit for that. Your own intelligence agencies, not Obama's, telling you that the Russians did do it. And so if you block it and you veto it, you basically told us there's nothing I can do because if I don't block these sanctions, Putin is going to deliver on the other end of the threat. We don't know what the other end of that threat is, but Mueller's busy trying to find out. This is the most obvious thing in the world. Okay, I told you, way too stupid to do a cover up. Can't do it, he doesn't have it in him. He desperately wants to, he's just not bright enough to figure out how. Okay, we got to take a break here. Wait till you get a load of Scaramucci. What did he do last night that was so shocking and unprecedented? And how did he follow it up today? You're going to love this story. Young Turks tweets later, guys. We got a big show ahead for you guys, so we got to keep going, okay? So let's go to the Scaramucci story. Anthony Scaramucci is the new communications director for the White House, and boy, he's not good at communications. He's a bull in a china shop. He's literally threatened to fire everyone, and at one point said, and I love this quote, "I'm more of a front stabbing person," right? He doesn't like to backstab you, he likes to front stab you. Well, that's what he did last night. He sent out a tweet that said, "In light of the leak of my financial disclosure info, which is a felony, I will be contacting the FBI and the Justice Department, #swamp, at Reince45. What? Wait a minute. Why did you include Reince Priebus in that tweet? So, okay, let's just break this down. Number one, it is not a felony to leak his financial disclosure forms. He made that up. If you're the White House communications director and you're gonna tweet in public, just for a second, look up if it's true or not. These people are so grotesquely incompetent. Okay, number two, you're gonna accuse the White House chief of staff in your own administration of leaking against you and reporting to the FBI? This is so unprecedented. Even Nixon's administration didn't do this stuff publicly. They did Watergate and all that stuff behind the scenes. They didn't come out and go, "Oh yeah, I'm gonna fire you, Sessions. Oh yeah, you should step down. Oh yeah, the communications director says Reince Priebus should go." That's unbelievable. And if there was any sense of order, the boss, in this case Donald Trump, would come in and go, "What are you doing? What are you accusing the guy publicly? Are you nuts?" That's the White House chief of staff. That's arguably the second most important person in government, and that's part of my team. And you're saying we should report my own team to the FBI? And you're not even right. And second of all, the FBI and the Justice Department are removed from the White House. They are supposed to be separate. For example, if they need to investigate the White House, which is kind of where we are today. So you got that second part wrong too. Even if you thought it was the case, you can't direct, the White House cannot direct the FBI to investigate, in this case, the White House. This is so insane, it's insane. Ryan Lizzo then tweets, "In case there's any ambiguity in his tweet, I can confirm that Scaramucci wants the FBI to investigate Reince for leaking." So Ryan Lizzo apparently talked to Scaramucci, and he's like, "Yeah, of course, I'm gonna tell you something, okay? I want that guy investigated." So there's no dispute over it anymore. Okay, and then did Reince Priebus leak? Well, that's a good question. It's not relevant because it's not a crime, and he couldn't report it to the FBI. And it's mental that he's doing it publicly instead of going behind the scenes and going, "Hey, Mr. President, we have a really dire situation here. I think your chief of staff might be the leaker." Well, you would handle it internally, you schmuck. Anyway, he didn't do any of that. But did Reince leak it? It turns out no. The person who reported his financial disclosure forms from Politico wrote this tweet. Wow, she woke up late because this happened in the middle of the night. Of course, as usual. She says, "Wow, sorry I slept through all the fun. For whatever it's worth, Mr. Scaramucci's Form 278E is publicly available from Export-Import Bank. Just ask. That's all you have to do." And she followed up by saying, "My source for Scaramucci financials was Export-Import Bank, period." So it was not Reince Priebus who went and disclosed this. In fact, it turns out it's been public for 3 days. But the Trump administration is filled with schmucks. They never do their homework. What did I tell you about Trump from day one? His number one problem is not all the horrible things he's done. It's his incompetence. And Scaramucci and him have been friends for a long time because they look at each other and go, "Hey, you're just like me. You do the same hand motions. You do the same outrageous attacks in public, which make no sense. And you also punch yourself in the face just like I do." So we're just seeing it in public. This is an amazing situation. After Scaramucci went to do so-called damage control on CNN the next morning, which made it way worse, which I'll give you just a sense of that in a sec, somebody else leaked to a reporter on Bloomberg who then went on right after Scaramucci and said, White House sources saying this interview was a car crash. So it's also not working to stop the leaks at all. And Scaramucci, of course, denies this. He goes, wrong. Tweet was public notice to leakers that all senior administration officials are helping to end illegal leaks. And at Reince 45. He's saying, no. I didn't include Reince Priebus in the tweet to say he did it. I was doing it because like, hey, we're all in this together. Then why did you delete it? He deleted the tweet. You delete the tweet if you think, oh, I shouldn't have done that. Remember, this is the same guy who said earlier, I love this tweet. Earlier he tweeted when he first came on, full transparency, I'm deleting old tweets. What? No, that's the opposite of transparency. You delete them because you're embarrassed of them. So, God, he doesn't know anything, and he's a communications director, and no one has botched communications more than this. So let me go to.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, there's a little bit of context because there's another piece out in the New Yorker by Ryan Lizza who we quoted because he was the first to start talking about the things that were happening within the administration. There was one thing he tweeted Wednesday night that was talking about a dinner in the White House. The First Lady, Trump, Hannity, and Bill Shine were all there, and also Scaramucci was there. This is what left him incensed about Priebus. This is what he thinks Priebus actually is leaking about, which led him to the whole full thing. And this is one quote, because this is the full article, 3 pages you have to read, that Lizza wrote, came out about an hour ago. One point when he's talking about how mad he is, he goes, Reince is a paranoid schizophrenic and a paranoiac. But he said a effing paranoid. Then he said, oh, Bill Shine's coming in. And he was like acting like he's Reince Priebus. He's telling all this to the reporter. Oh, Bill Shine's coming in. Let me leak the fucking thing and see if I can cockblock these people the way I cockblocked Scaramucci for 6 months. So he's mad about how from the beginning, Reince Priebus didn't want Scaramucci and he was fighting with Trump since they came in to keep Scaramucci from coming in. He brought him in, now he thinks he's mad, so he thinks he's leaking everything. Then it led to all things that happened on the CNN interview. He's mad at Priebus, he thinks he's the one.
So let's go to video 5 here. Let's give you a little sample of what happened on CNN this morning.
Reince Priebus's name is connected to this every time it comes out in the last 24 hours. Do you have concerns about him?
Can speak to you about that, and he can address that himself.
All right,
okay?
We will ask
people
him.
know my history between me and Reince.
Yes.
Okay, I can speak for my own actions. He's going to need to speak for his own actions.
Wait a minute. If you are working with Reince, as you said in your later tweet, and there's no beef, why would you? He's got to speak for himself. People know our history. We do know your history. Your history is that you guys hate each other. You wanted his job. He made sure that you couldn't get into the White House, and now you're in open warfare. So that's basically him saying, yeah, that's right. Yeah, I thought Reince was the leaker. But you just said he wasn't the leaker. God, he's so dumb. Okay, I'm gonna go to videos 9 and 12 here too. Let's go to video 9 here and see how he follows that up.
If this is about dirty pool politics, should the FBI be involved in that?
I talked to Attorney General Sessions. He's on his way to El Salvador right now to talk about MS-13. It's a little early. I've got buddies of mine in the FBI that I'll be calling.
That's interesting timing.
Yeah, that's definitely interesting timing, okay? So he's basically saying, no, I don't care, man. I'm still going to the FBI. Even though I know now, I've been told that it's not the right thing to do. I'm gonna go to the FBI. And I'm beefing with Reince, so I presumably he's going to talk to them about that. You know what, let's go to video 4 too. Let's go to video 4 right now, because it gives you a sense of who he's directing this to.
And as you know from the Italian expression, the fish stinks from the head down. But I can tell you 2 fish that don't stink, okay? And that's me and the president.
And who does that leave? This is insane. So he just told you from the head down, chief of staff. I have never seen an administration where 2 officials are openly warring with one another, saying the other one should be fired. What a mess. This guy, Donald Trump, was supposed to be a great leader. So I know how to lead. Okay, I'm gonna get things done because I just tell them, oh, you do this and you do that, and everything's gonna be great. No, it's a mess, in his own words. It's a mess, we're not winning with this. Okay, but I will give Scaramucci this. He is living up to the first part of his name, Scar. And he does stab people from the front because he's doing it on national television to his own chief of staff. We have one last clip from Scaramucci here. This apparently was directed at Reince Priebus. Let's go to video 12.
tweet.
He said tweet. He said tweet. Okay. All right. Now let me give you the other part of the story. Okay. There's no end to this story. This is amazing. Okay. So last night, Scaramucci, the White House communications director, puts out an insane tweet saying that he's sending the information about leakers of his financial disclosure forms to the FBI and to the Justice Department. As you might know by now, because we've been covering it, the White House is not allowed to send things like that to the FBI Justice Department. It wasn't a felony and it wasn't a leak. It was already public information. Clown-orama. And then he deleted the tweet in a panic and then later said, no, I'm friends with Reince. And then you're about to see the CNN interview. Ain't friends. Nothing close to friends. So he goes on CNN for half an hour, which is, ironically, there's a leak in the middle of the interview that CNN reports right after the interview where a senior White House administration official says this interview is a car crash. Well, I want to show you that car crash. So let's start from the top, video 3. Here's Scaramucci on CNN.
And the president also told me, if you're nice to me in this segment, he'll let me come back on the show. Is that cool? So why don't you let me talk for a little bit, and then you can ask me questions. And what the president and I would like to tell everybody, we have a very, very good idea of who the leakers are, who the senior leakers are in the White House.
We know who the senior leakers are at the White House. Wait, if the president and you know it, why doesn't the president just fire them? I mean, the one thing he's known for is firing people, whether it was apprentice or immediately once he gets inside the White House, like, oh, okay, all you people I hired, you're fired, you're fired, you're fired, right? So if he knows, why doesn't he? And so who is it? Because you seem to indicate it was Reince Priebus. Reporters have now absolutely positively clarified that you talked to them and said it was Reince Priebus. Now you're claiming it's not, but who is it? Let's go to the next video.
And as you know from the Italian expression, the fish stinks from the head down. But I can tell you two fish that don't stink, okay? And that's me and the president.
Just say it. Say it's Reince Priebus. You're saying everything but that. It's super obvious. God, this is amazing. The incompetence is legendary and record-breaking. All right, next clip's a little bit longer. This is kind of where he challenges Reince.
I don't like the activity that's going on in the White House. I don't like what they're doing to my friend. I don't like what they're doing to the president of the United States or their fellow colleagues in the West Wing. Now, if you want to talk about the staff, we have had odds, we have had differences. When I said we were brothers from the podium, that's because we're rough on each other. Some brothers are like Cain and Abel. Other brothers can fight with each other and then get along. I don't know if this is repairable or not. That will be up to the president. But he's the chief of staff. He's responsible for understanding and uncovering and helping me do that inside the White House, which is why I put that tweet out last night. When the journalists who actually know who the leakers are, like Ryan Lizard, they know the leakers. Jonathan Swain at Axio, these guys know who the leakers are. I respect them for not telling me because I understand and respect journalistic integrity. However, when I put out a tweet and I put Reince's name in the tweet, they're all making the assumption that it's him because journalists know who the leakers are. So if Reince wants to explain that he's not a leaker, let him do that. But let me tell you something about myself. I am a straight shooter, and I'll go right to the heart of the matter. Okay, so I'm done talking. You can ask me questions, but be nice on this segment, Chris.
What a weird New York thing to say, but remember, be nice in this segment, okay? He says he's done talking. He was nowhere near done talking. And who says we're like Cain and Abel? You know they killed each other, or one of them killed the other. That is not a good analogy to make about the White House communications director and the White House chief of staff. Do you know what you're saying? You know your job is communications. He had no experience in communications. He was a financial guy. So, wow, it looks like Trump hired someone who didn't know what he was doing. Shocking. I knew you didn't see that coming. So Cain and Abel was bad enough. The fish stinks from the head down is bad enough. Hold. Let's go to the next one.
But the White House leaks are small potatoes relative to things that are going on with leaking things about Syria or North Korea or leaking things about Iraq. Those are the types of leaks that are so treasonous that 150 years ago, people would have actually been hung for those types of leaks.
Oh, I see. I'm glad we brought the tone back down. Well, the leakers, we used to hang them. You know what I'm saying? What are you saying on national television? He's not done. More.
You know what I like bringing up the Department of Justice and the FBI? Because people that have done things that are wrong makes them nervous, Chris. Okay, I haven't done anything wrong, so I am not nervous at all. When people do things wrong, and you mentioned the FBI and the Department of Justice, you watch. I told the president this morning, when the iceberg hits the boat, the rats start flying up from steerage, right? Because the water comes in steerage. Okay, so when you mention the FBI and the Department of Justice, you watch how the rats lift in the boat.
You just called the chief of staff a rat, and you talked about how the leakers should be hung. Now, presumably, Reince didn't leak anything about Syria and North Korea, so let's just say you didn't mean that about Reince. But for the president to tolerate this kind of dissension within his own administration and not to straighten it out shows horrible management skills. I mean, I've never seen a manager this bad in my life, and we're all seeing it because he's the president of the United States. He's doing it in front of everybody. Do you let a guy if somebody from the opposition party talked about your chief of staff that way, imagine what Trump would say. But his silence is deafening. And Scaramucci keeps saying, I talked to the president and I talked this morning, and he says I said they're like rats, right? You know what I'm saying, Dottie? So apparently Donald Trump is on Scaramucci's side. So, but he's the one in obvious insubordination of the chief of staff. He's the one doing it publicly. Rice didn't do it publicly. Any rational human being would fire Scaramucci, but instead it looks like Rice is the one in trouble. I don't know how this sorts itself out. You know why? Because Trump doesn't know. He's like, oh, this is a problem. I didn't know it was going to be a problem. I told him to fire everybody, and I told him to go after the guys, including my own second in charge, chief of staff. The vice president sits in his own residence, doesn't know anything. Chief of staff is, in essence, the second most powerful person. And Trump is apparently, he saw the tweet Scaramucci sent last night, I guess, saying that his own chief of staff should be reported to the FBI for a felony. Again, not true. It wasn't a felony and Reince didn't do it. But the president saw that, and then he talks to Scaramucci this morning, and he's like, okay, go on CNN, make more of a jackass out of yourself. I can't describe to you how insane this is. More from Scaramucci. He's not done, he's never done.
If this is about dirty pool politics, should the FBI be involved in that?
I talked to Attorney General Sessions. He's on his way to El Salvador right now to talk about MS-13. It's a little early. I've got buddies of mine in the FBI that I'll be calling.
That's interesting timing.
The White House is not supposed to direct the FBI. That is a part of our checks and balances, but they don't know anything about our government. So I'm sitting here in the White House, Chris, and I directed the FBI. Oh my God, why did you just admit that on air? How many times can I say incompetence? More.
No laws have been broken, no FBI, no Department of Justice, but I like mentioning them because I know knee knockers when I see them and their knees will start knocking.
I know the knee knockers, you know what I'm saying? You got these rats trying to get off the bone. I know the knee knockers. So I tell them something, okay? I say, I gotta report you to the FBI whether it's legal or illegal. That's what I gotta do, okay? All right, Mooch. One last one from the Mooch.
You know we shouldn't be running the White House like that.
Look, I totally get why you want integrity of purpose within your White House. I think that your desire to be straight about it is important. I think that's why these tweets last night got you in a little bit of trouble, and I wanted to give you a chance to clarify it.
No, I'm not. Believe me. Let me tell you something. I work for one person. Okay, I report to the president of the United States. I talked to him 15 minutes this morning. I'm far from in trouble.
I'm not saying you're in trouble, but I'm saying the tweets and the deleting the tweets.
I have his full support, okay?
So look, Donald Trump, if Scaramucci really does have your full support and he thinks the fish stinks from the head down and he thinks it's Reince Priebus and he wants to report him to the FBI, if you think your chief of staff committed a felony, then you should fire him immediately. But yet there's still no one home. The president hasn't spoken about this, and he's just letting this happen in front of the whole world. have you ever seen management this bad? If you saw it at a company, you would be in disbelief. When are they going to do something about this? But it's playing out in front of the whole planet. I've never seen anything so mental in my life. Every day you wake up, and just when you think you hit the bottom, you find out that this barrel doesn't have a bottom. So what's going to happen tomorrow? I have no idea. But this thing is spinning out of control so fast, we can't keep up with it. This is such a mess, it's making our heads spin. By the way, Trump supporters, are you tired of winning yet? Remember you were going to win so much, you were going to get tired of winning? You might be tired, but it ain't of winning. One last quote for you guys. Josh Green talked to a senior White House advisor. He's from Bloomberg, but he was on CNN right after Scaramucci's interview. The senior White House advisor said the interview, as I told you earlier, was a car crash. So then Green says on the air, so the idea that stunts like this are going to lock down the leaks, shut them off, I think is probably wrong. Because they're leaking while he's complaining about leaks on CNN. So not only has it been grotesquely counterproductive, it also didn't accomplish its mission. Incompetence through and through. All right, so that's Scaramucci. There's a Scaramucci. I mean, how do they find these guys? It's amazing. Okay, all right, let's go to, I want to go to Brownback, okay? So Sam Brownback is the governor of Kansas, or he was. I'm going to tell you what happened to him in a second. And what he did was an epic disaster in Kansas. And even Republicans admit that, in fact, they're now reversing his policies. So he's got a new job, and I want to tell you about that, and this is going to be great. Kansas Governor Sam Brownback will leave that role as governor in favor of a job in the Trump administration. Oh, great. Yet another incompetent person joining the Trump administration. That's what the White House announced on Wednesday. So, how bad is Brownback? I mean, he's a deeply Republican governor in a deeply Republican state of Kansas. So, and he got to do all the things that Republicans always promised, which is tax cuts for the rich and corporations. He did it, and it was supposed to trickle down all over Kansas. It did, but not in the way that they were expecting. So, but still, he's a Republican governor, it's a Republican state, so they should love what he did, right? No. Sam Brownback should thank Chris Christie, because that's the only reason why he's the second most unpopular governor in the country. So he's coming in at number 49 because Chris Christie's shutting down beaches and lying all over him in New Jersey. So if you can't be a popular Republican governor in Kansas, you really suck at your job. So I think he's at what, 27% approval rating, 66% disapproval. Those numbers are miserable. By the way, he's more unpopular than Rick Snyder, who poisoned Flint, Michigan. This is unbelievable. Okay, so why? Why did the Republicans in Kansas turn on him? Well, he did a tax cut bill in 2012 when he came in. He's like, tax cuts for the rich, yes! And he did $3.7 billion for over 5 years. Now, for a state like Kansas, that's a giant number. But hey, this is the experiment Republicans have been waiting for their whole lives. You had the whole legislature, you had the governor, you got to do whatever you want. You did a giant tax cut for the top, and so did it work? Because their idea is not only does it help the economy, but once it helps the economy, you could actually collect more revenue for the government. No, it won't create deficits that we just took $3.7 billion out of the budget. No, it'll magically, with fairy dust, create surpluses. So did it? No. So between 2014 and 2017, not the whole 5-year span, $715 million in deficits. Oops. So then they had to pretty much butcher everything else in the budget because they got to get to balanced budget. So there's now a $715 million hole in the budget over those set of years in a small state like Kansas. So they're throwing things overboard. Look, I can give you a dozen examples. I'll just give you one. Education budget cuts in just 1 year, in 2015, totaled $44.5 million. So when you throw people's kids overboard because your dumbass tax cuts for the rich didn't work, well, then people start to get mad. So, and right before he left, and I'm going to tell you his job in a second, in a stunning blow to Brownback's legacy, TPM reports, Kansas legislators overrode the governor's veto in June to pass a bill reversing the income tax cuts that had come to haunt the state and mark Brownback's governorship. So that is not a Democratic legislature. That is a deeply Republican legislature. He vetoed it. They overrode the veto. They had to get almost everybody on board, a huge majority on board to say, no, our Republican governor is a dumbass. And those income tax cuts that we told you would work for the corporations and for mainly the proceeds go to the rich, only a small portion for the middle class. And we told you they would eventually help the middle class. They didn't. It was a grotesque failure. We Republicans in Kansas admit it was a failure. We're going to override his veto and make sure we don't do tax cuts anymore. What have we been telling you all this time? It doesn't work. They got everything they wanted. They did their experiment and it was an epic failure. So where's Brownback going now? He has a very important job at the Trump White House. He's going to be ambassador at large for international religious freedom. If you're wondering what that is, you're not alone. That looks like a made-up job. Now, it's not, to be fair, we looked into it. Clinton administration passed a law that created this office for friends who are religious. That you're an ambassador at large, float away. And what are you working on? International. How do you work on international religious freedom? By the way, if you want to do that, you picked the wrong guy. Let's look at his record on that front. Talking Points memo explains in March of last year, Brownback signed into law a measure enabling student groups at public colleges to discriminate on the basis of religion. Okay, such that only Christian students, for example, could join a Christian student association. Now look, you might agree with, hey, only Christians should get to join Christian groups. That's fine, but what he did was say, you are allowed to discriminate based on religion. His new job is to make sure no one discriminates based on religion. The ACLU of Kansas noted in a statement Wednesday that, quote, throughout his tumultuous tenure, Governor Brownback worked tirelessly to erode the protections that the First Amendment affords for separation of church and state. The other thing the First Amendment does is it says you shall not establish a religion and you shall have freedom of religion. Because if you establish a religion, which is also in other parts of the Constitution, then you have eroded the freedom of other religions. It's a simple concept, one that Sam Brownback doesn't understand, hence why he got this job. But overall, look, he's leaving for an incredibly unimportant job with almost no responsibility because he had to get the hell out of Dodge. Dodge is actually in Kansas, so in this case, it's perfect. He's like, I don't want to be governor anymore. This is so embarrassing. Please, please, get me anything. And the Trump administration is like, yeah, okay, hey, we got this. Sam, come here. So we actually have video here. It's video 14 of Sam Brownback in his new important role. Sam, how's the rest of your political career going? Well, let's watch.
Dr. Stone, detach. You must detach. If you don't detach, that arm's gonna carry you too far. Listen to my voice. You need to focus. I'm losing visual of you. In 2 seconds, I won't be able to track you. You need to detach. I can't see you anymore. Do it now. Houston, I've lost visual, Dr. Stone.
There goes Sam. Ambassador at large. There's Republicanism for you. All right, we got to take a quick break. We got a whole nother hour for you guys. We'll be right back. TYT is partnering with Participant Media to help solve the climate crisis. Wouldn't that be great? Now, look, you got to check out our series, 10 Days of Action, to learn more about what you can do to make a difference. And go see an inconvenient sequel, Truth to Power, in theaters in New York and LA on July 28th and nationwide August 4th. If President Trump won't lead, we should. The American people have to do it. The majority of Americans, civic leaders, mayors, governors, businesses, they're already moving forward to stop climate change. So no single person can stop us. I pledge to join the movement and hashtag #BeInconvenient. Go to inconveniencesequel.com/action to be part of the solution. I have decided that I'm going to get ripped. Okay.
What?
Okay.
Like physically?
Yeah. Okay. What? You don't believe me?
I 100% don't believe you.
I will get so ripped, here's my prediction, that someone at TYT will say, Cenk, you've got to stop working out.
We're tired of you winning.
So you don't believe me?
Cenk, you don't have time to like do your daily duties for the main show.
Duties. You don't even have time for your daily duties. Because what you guys don't know is how great my muscles already are.
It's absolutely possible, but you can't have Leah run to the food truck to get you like 2 different types of grilled cheeses with like tater tots for lunch. Like you can't have that anymore.
Let's see what happens.
You also have to go to the gym regularly.
Let's see what happens. All I'm saying is, let's see what happens. Have I ever been wrong about a prediction? Almost ever.
He's a war hero. 5.5 years. He's a war hero because he was captured. I like people that weren't captured, okay?
He said I had small hands. They're not small, are they? I never heard that one before.
All right, back on the Young Turks, Cenk and Anna with you guys.
Hi, everybody.
What an insane day today
Yeah.
is. Okay, so Vice President Gore was on the show earlier. If you missed any of it, tytnetwork.com/join. Last 2 days now of free membership, so this is time to act. Free TYT is a promo code when you go to that link, and you get a whole month of membership free. You get the whole show whenever you want it, ad free. Okay, the Ryan Lizza story on Scaramucci is insane.
It's so good.
Some of the best lines I've ever seen in politics, to be fair to him.
It's so good. I tweeted it, so if you guys want to read it, just go to my Twitter. And
we'll do something on it soon, okay? So we're just trying to keep up with the news. It's going like a fucking freight train. I can't catch it. Anyway, we got a whole second hour for you guys. So
you know what Scaramucci is? He's triggered. Like
man.
So triggered.
How has Trump not fired someone today? Like you either gotta fire Reince or you gotta fire Scaramucci. But you can't keep them both in the same house. This is insane. He said they're like Cain and Abel. They're going to murder each other.
Yeah,
okay. Let alone what he apparently thinks of Steve Bannon. Hold, we'll somehow get that to you later, okay? All right, so Anna, go ahead.
All right. Following Donald Trump's decision to randomly and surprisingly ban transgender individuals from the military through a series of tweets, people started questioning the medical costs that taxpayers essentially have to pay for when it comes to members of our military and also veterans. And so Trump's argument was, oh, it's gonna be too expensive to take care of the medical procedures for these trans veterans, when in reality, it's only going to be a tiny, tiny, tiny fraction of what the Pentagon pays in healthcare costs. And then people brought up the example of erectile dysfunction drugs and how the Pentagon actually does spend a considerable amount of money on that. So just to give you the exact numbers, the Pentagon's annual spending on erectile dysfunction medications is about $84 million a year. When it comes to transition-related healthcare for trans military members, the Rand Institute estimated that at most it would be $8.4 million. So again, it's a tiny fraction of what they spend on erectile dysfunction drugs, let alone what they spend on healthcare overall for our military members. Now, keep in mind that they also have spent a whopping $294 million on Viagra, Cialis, and other such medications since 2011. So we're spending a lot of money on making sure that our vets and our military get the stiffies that they need, which is fine. I actually have no problem with that. Okay, because a lot of our members, a lot of military members suffer from PTSD. That leads to erectile dysfunction. Look, we need to do right by our soldiers, okay? I think that's the right thing to do. And I'm not gonna get in there and be like, what are you doing? Are you taking erectile dysfunction drugs? Am I paying for it, right? I don't wanna get involved in their lives like that. But the right wing does, so.
Yeah, so just give me some perspective here. Look, I believe in the troops' rights to stand a post or to raise the flag. And so I'm not trying to take that away from them. But you can't complain about how expensive it is to provide healthcare for trans soldiers and then say something that's completely optional. I mean, I know what you're thinking if you're a guy, like, I don't know that sex is optional, right? Okay, I hear you, brother, but it's not life-saving, it's not part of your identity, and it's et cetera, et cetera. I'm not trying to take it away from you, but it costs 10 times more.
Right.
So it is not about the cost. And look, that goes to the idea that people bring up, which is that, most of the lawmakers are males. So when it comes to Viagra and all that stuff, they just don't question it. They're like, of course we need erections. But this is, which monstrous person wouldn't want me to be able to get medication and pay for it that allows me to have stimulus? But then when you turn around and Rush Limbaugh says, if you want birth control, you're a slut.
Yeah, that's
and why should health insurance have to pick up birth control, which is a super tangential to Rush Limbaugh and whatever bills he pays for healthcare, right?
Right, and look, to be quite honest with you, we put our soldiers through so much, multiple deployments, taking them away from their friends and their families multiple times just so they can go to these senseless wars in the Middle East. And so they go through a lot, not only physically, but psychologically. And so when it comes to, psychological issues that they face, of course, PTSD is one of the biggest issues that, in my opinion, continues to go untreated. They're still not being given the resources necessary to combat that. But hey, you know what? Private contractors, there's no problem signing signing contracts with them and making them wealthy, while we, essentially put our soldiers at risk. Just to give you numbers, I want to read this because it's unbelievable. So there was a study in 2014 by the Armed Forces Health Surveillance Branch, and they found that 100,242 cases of erectile dysfunction were diagnosed among active service members between 2004 and 2013, with annual incidence rates more than doubling in that time period.
Wow, that's really interesting.
So we've been escalating war, in the Middle East, and it's having a negative impact on them. So look, I'm saying all this because I don't want to get involved in their lives. I don't want to tell them what drugs they can and can't take, what should be covered, what shouldn't be covered. But I think the same type of respect should be extended to the trans community as well, especially if they're going to put their lives on the line to defend the country.
And one last stat for you guys. In Donald Trump's just first 80 days, okay, not all the way through his administration, the expenses that the American taxpayer had to pick up for just his optional trips to Mar-a-Lago so that he can golf on the weekends, something he criticized President Obama for, was $20 million. So what, about 2.5 times what it takes to cover all trans people in the military, all their healthcare needs. So if you actually cared about saving taxpayers money, if all you had to do was miss a couple of golfing outlets, trips, and then we'd be covered. He doesn't care about the costs when it comes to him going and doing free ads for Mar-a-Lago and golfing. He couldn't care less. This is to discriminate and to rile up his base and to do distraction. It is the most obvious thing in the world.
So we all know that it's not really about the cost, but it seemed completely out of nowhere that he tweeted these things, right? And we suspected that it was a distraction. But I realized something last night after the show. Look, he is aggressively attacking Jeff Sessions, his attorney general. And the reality is the right wing loves Jeff Sessions. They love the fact that he's against immigration, he's against amnesty. He's just, right wing 101. He is the embodiment of what the right wing loves. And so if he's attacking Jeff Sessions this aggressively, that might turn off his base a little bit, right? So how does he appeal to his base again? He starts with the demagoguery again. He starts talking about, all these violent and dangerous immigrants. I don't know if you covered it, but he recently did a speech about undocumented immigrants, and he talked about MS-13 beheading people and just fear-mongering about them. Again, he's appealing to his base by doing this nonsense. It has nothing to do with cost. It has nothing to do with policy. He didn't even really think it through before tweeting it about it.
They say the Democrats do identity politics. What is this? This is identity politics. Don't worry, I'll protect you from the scary trans community. And look, if you're a Trump supporter, even you know it doesn't have to do with the cost. You know it for a fact. And right now you're going, yeah, I know, but those people shouldn't serve. It's a distraction. I don't want them in the foxhole or whatever. But you know it's not about the cost, and you know that Trump is lying about that.
Yeah. All right, moving on to some other news. A new study indicates that college students who smoke marijuana might actually suffer in their studies a little bit, which is not that surprising. But this study has raised a few alarms, a few red flags, and I want to give you the details about it. So this study actually took place in the Netherlands, near Amsterdam to be specific. And apparently-
That's a good place to do a study on pot.
Right, so now what happened in this one particular town is they were having issues with drug tourism. People from neighboring countries were coming in to some of these cafes, smoking marijuana, and they were concerned about it. They were worried about crime and things like that. So go ahead.
Near Amsterdam, people were coming in to smoke pot?
Right.
Oh my God, heaven forfend.
So this is super interesting. So what ended up happening is two economic researchers in the area decided to look into, what would happen if lawmakers in the area changed the policy, and they did change the policy. They said, people who are not citizens will not be able to legally purchase marijuana. However, people who are here legally, people who are citizens will be able to purchase the drug as much as they want, right? So all of a sudden they have this interesting potential study. They have a university with a group of students who can purchase the marijuana, continue using the marijuana, and then a group of students who are from other countries and they don't have access to it. And so the researchers looked at that and the findings were kind of interesting. Let's go to graphic 8. Those banned from cannabis cafes had more than 5% increase in their odds of passing their courses. Low performing students benefited even more. So that was the outcome. I don't think 5% is that interesting or that significant. Maybe some of you do, but also keep in mind that the study didn't look into whether or not the individuals who are cut off from legally purchasing the marijuana were buying it from other places. You know what I'm saying?
So there's definitely a couple of issues with this study, which is that there might be some self-selection in there as well. They might have had more time to study because they weren't traveling all the way to Amsterdam, right? Well, and you don't know that they weren't smoking weed at home.
Right.
So a number of issues with the study. But if you found out that students who stopped smoking pot did a little better, 5% better in school, would you really be surprised? So if that is the most damning thing that they've got on pot, ooh.
I know, and also, look, I don't want people who are underage to be smoking marijuana, right? But once you're an adult, you get to make your own decisions. And so if you are 18 and older, you're going to school and you decide, I wanna wake and bake, I wanna smoke marijuana all day long, of course that's gonna negatively, well, not necessarily for everyone, because I think it affects people differently. But if it affects you in a negative way, that's not surprising. It slows some people down. Other people become more analytical.
If you take it before a test, good luck remembering anything. Right, so that's very believable. But on the other hand, they've never done a study, or not that I know of, on the effect of alcohol on students. So if you do guys who are getting drunk and guys who are not getting drunk, and how do they do in school? My guess is you're going to find something a little bit bigger than 5%.
Right. Yeah.
So, but look, we're keeping it real. And so if there are issues with pot, and we've reported a couple other stories, we tell you that too. But overall, legalize.
Exactly. All right, let's take a quick break. The next story is somewhat serious. Break, and then we'll cover a video of inmates escaping. They filmed it, and it's super fascinating. And then some really good news for the future of Alzheimer patients.
Oh, that story is amazeballs.
Yeah.
That's a really important story. Okay, you're not, and once you, all right, I'm not gonna make the joke. All right, we'll be right back.
I want to do a quick announcement before we get on to the stories because I think it's important and I want to encourage you guys to go. All right, so TYT will be at Politicon this year. The dates are July 29th and the 30th. And I'm actually extremely excited. In the past, when I've done Politicon events, it's always been panels. Last year I did that panel with a number of anti-Bernie Sanders people, and of course it was a lot of fun because I was the only one on there that supported Bernie. But this year we're gonna be debating people. Debates are gonna happen.
Can I just say, if you missed Politicon last year, that was a mistake, because Anna's panel alone was worth the price of admission, because they love balance. They love talking to the press about balance, right?
Right.
But all of a sudden, there was only one Bernie Sanders supporter and wall-to-wall Hillary Clinton supporters.
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
Including a lot of the people you see on TV. And she mauled. The entire crowd was on your side. But look, it's not just that you kicked ass. It's not that just the crowd was on your side. It's that if the crowd, even if like it's unfair because the crowd is all Bernie Sanders, then maybe you should have a couple of Bernie Sanders panelists, right?
Right.
But they didn't need it because they had Anna.
Well, and it was a fun discussion, and I really enjoyed it. But this year is also going to be a lot of fun. We're going to get involved in a number of debates. Cenk, who are you debating?
Oh boy, here we go. Buckle up, everybody. You asked for it, you're going to get it. Ben Shapiro. Okay.
Bloop, 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 bloop. All right.
Right wingers have been asking for quite some time. Come and see.
All right, and I will be debating Ann Coulter.
Damn.
Ann versus Anna. Anna versus Ann. It's gonna be fun. I can't wait. And Hassan will also be there, and he is also debating someone who is a millennial who is very much against millennials. Like that's his whole shtick. So that should be a lot of fun as well.
That ought to be great. Woke Bay versus Sleepy Bay.
Anyway, you guys can get your tickets by going to politicon.com/TYT. Politicon.com/TYT. It takes place in Pasadena, California. We really hope to see you guys there, so definitely check it out.
And if you're watching this as a video on YouTube or Facebook, we'll have the link down below for you guys.
You have in common with your daughter?
I was going to say sex, but I can't relate that to
He said I had small hands. They're not small, are they? I never heard that one before.
Back on the Young Turks, Jen and Anna with you guys. Miri writes in, I wouldn't have gotten my degree without pot. It helped me focus and held my social anxiety at bay. Okay, well then there's
that's what I'm saying. It affects people differently, and so it makes me way more analytical. If I'm sitting and I'm reading an article, I think about it in ways that I wouldn't if I were
Everybody reacts super differently to it. Cynthia Sorensen writes in, I smoke and I can read a whole chapter with no interruption, but remember some of it, okay? Travis Moore says, study high, test high, get high scores. Okay, if you say so. It probably would not have worked for me. And the members of the day are Michael Hagermark and Dale Carsonston. So Dale and Michael, thank you guys, really appreciate it. You make independent media possible. Last 2 days of free trial membership for a whole month. So go to tytnetwork.com/join, enter the promo code FREETYT. One other thing, Politicon's this weekend. Anna's gonna debate Ann Coulter. I'm gonna debate Ben Shapiro. Haas is gonna debate Charlie Kirk, a young Republican. I have no idea how that's gonna go, neither do you. I'm gonna be on a panel about what the Democratic Party should do. You know who's, I just remembered who's on that panel?
Who?
Senator Klobuchar.
Oh my God, that's so good. Oh, it's so good. I'm excited.
Simone Sanders, who used to do communications for Bernie Sanders, on the panel. So if you're gonna go, politicon.com/TYT, that's on Saturday and Sunday in Pasadena here in Southern California, politicon.com/TYT. Oh, and tonight, Aggressive Progressives. So if you guys are not members, you can catch it live at 6 o'clock. The first segment is always free to everybody. I say 6 o'clock Pacific, of course. It's 9 o'clock Eastern, right here on tytnetwork.com. And then, but if you want to get the whole show, again, if you sign up for membership now, you can also access the archives and get a lot more Aggressive Progressive than you know what to do with. tytnetwork.com/join, promo code FREETYT. Okay, what's next, Anna?
All right. In January of 2016, 3 inmates managed to escape from a prison in Southern California. And interestingly enough, they filmed themselves doing so, and that film has just been released to the public. Now, to give you a little bit of context before we show you that awesome film, they used a contraband cell phone, and the 3 individuals were Hossein Nair, Jonathan Tu, and Tane Duong, and they documented their escape from a maximum security wing of the Orange County Jail in January of 2016.
That warms my heart. Look at Americans getting together. That appears to be a Muslim name and 2 Asians.
Yes. Now, it shouldn't warm your heart too much because they had very serious charges against them, murder charges among them.
Do I have to point out that I'm kidding? Right?
Yeah.
Of course, I don't want murderers escaping from prison.
Right. Now,
and you should do your maximum security prisons a little. You should come correct a little bit better than this.
Right. Now, they haven't been convicted yet, but again, they have serious charges against them. And the good news is that they've all been captured. One of them turned himself in, and the other 2 were later caught 400 miles away from the prison.
Wow,
so
that's a long way from the prison.
So they get caught. So since they're caught, we can have a little bit of fun. Okay.
Oh, thanks, Scott.
Here is the video of them escaping.
Hossein Nayari, the alleged mastermind, even narrates.
As far as setup goes, well, we had a duffel bag and a backpack full of stuff.
He shows a sawed-off bed leg, then lifts a metal screen to slip out, giving a thumbs up to the camera. Set to the theme of Mission Impossible, you can see their journey through the jail walls along a makeshift ladder. Eventually, they get to the roof.
That is amazing.
Okay, link in the description box if you want to watch the whole report. Good job on the report there by the local station. Okay, they set it to music. That's amazing.
They like made a movie out of it.
Yeah, if they weren't potential or possible murderers, you'd kind of root for them. It's a little Shawshank there, and it was good production quality. I mean, he had nice narration. He had the Mission Impossible thing. The last thing I was expecting is he drops from the roof and then and then hovers above the floor.
But this isn't just like a county jail. You know what I'm saying? It's a maximum security prison. Maximum security. And look, one of the biggest issues was that they were lacking resources. They were underfunded and understaffed. And so as a result of this escape, lawmakers in the area decided maybe we should allocate a little more money and a little more resources just to make this maximum security prison a little more secure. Right?
But but the thing is, it's not like Shawshank. In Shawshank, he spent like years digging a tunnel. How maximum security is it? I mean, look, it's not easy to tell exactly the route.
Right.
But from that video, it seemed like they just knock out something from the wall, and there's a giant escape hatch there. like, did no one look at the blueprints and go, should we have this enormous thing that leads to outside that you could just knock out a vent and then go into?
Right, it's just a metal screen and it's not that easy to break through it. But again, in response to this jailbreak, the Sheriff's Department increased staffing by 4.5 million annually, and they did hire 22 new deputies and officers to man the facility. And look, here's the thing, here's the bigger problem, right? If we didn't incarcerate all of these non-violent offenders who just get caught with possession of drugs, well, then maybe we can focus our resources on people who actually are a threat to society or a danger to society, right? And unfortunately, we don't do that. We're spreading our resources thin, imprisoning people who are not violent, who, if anything, might need some rehabilitation for their drug use. Not if you're smoking marijuana. You don't need rehabilitation for that, right?
Yeah.
But you guys know what I'm saying. Like, we're wasting our resources day in and day out.
No, Anna's exactly right. We're going the wrong way.
You just, you say Asian names so much more confidently than I do. I'm like,
well, they're my family.
I know.
So it makes it a little easier. Although I think those were Vietnamese names.
Oh, okay. I don't, okay.
I'm pretty sure, but not positive. Okay, anyways,
Okay.
Yeah. Really sounds like
I'm in a funny mood.
Tien, Jonathan too, yeah.
Let's just move on.
But I want to bet somebody that they're Vietnamese. Anyways, all right,
Okay.
what's next?
All right, some good news for Alzheimer's patients. Researchers now believe that it is possible for those who are suffering from Alzheimer's to retrieve their memories if their minds are stimulated in certain ways. Now, this new study looked specifically at mice that have a similar condition regarding their memory. Now, to give you a little context into Alzheimer's, researchers have found that what causes Alzheimer's is the buildup of a sticky protein substance in the brain. It's an amyloid beta protein, that's what it's called. And so researchers realize that, some Alzheimer's patients will suddenly remember things from their past if they listen to music or if their minds get stimulated in certain ways. And so they kind of started off with that point, and then they started looking at mice to see if there's ways that they can stimulate mice and retrieve some of their memories. So let me give you the details of their studies. Now, the Columbia scientists carried out their experiment on 2 sets of mice, one with the Alzheimer's-like condition and the other with healthy brain cells. Both groups were actually genetically engineered so their neurons glowed yellow when new memories were created and red when old memories were recalled. So they exposed both sets of these mice to a lemony smell, then gave them an electric shock to kind of scare them when they're triggered by that smell. A week later, they tested these memories by releasing the same lemon scent. Okay, this is where things get super interesting. While the healthy mice froze in fear, half of the mice with Alzheimer's disease did not because they couldn't remember that lemony smell. And the neurons that glowed red were not in the same place as the yellow ones, unlike in the healthy mice where they overlapped. So then the researchers were like, okay, now we need to find a way to stimulate their mind or their brain in a certain way so they can remember things. And here's what they did. When a blue laser was shown down a fiber optic cable into the brains of the mice with Alzheimer's, stimulating the part of the brain where the memory was stored, they froze, indicating these memories had been revived.
Damn.
Bananas.
Okay, so first of all, I would like to scream, #science. I love science. People who are against facts and knowledge, I pity you. I pity the fool against science. All right, secondly, I'd like to say I'm a little bit like the mice. You know what happened when as you're telling the story, I'm like, ooh, lemon scent, that sounds really good. And then you said they got zapped, I was like, oh shit. Okay, right. Anyway, I'm a silly, silly man. Okay, now focusing on the really interesting revelations here. So science actually done some great advancement in being able to stop Alzheimer's going forward. So that's a different story, and so we think that we've got some new medicine that might be able to prevent it. So that now it does not, that medicine does not help people who already have Alzheimer's. So that's already a terrific advance. It's not quite ready yet, but it's getting there. So I love these kind of advancements, that millions of lives it is going to change for years and years and years. Those people are going to live much better lives. So it's wonderful. Now, secondarily, now this tells you the memories aren't even gone. So if you already have Alzheimer's, those memories can still be revived and brought back. Even better. So it's amazing.
That hypothesis has existed for quite some time because, again, as I mentioned, they notice, researchers and doctors notice that with some Alzheimer's patients, they'll be triggered by something, right, in a good way. So they'll hear
like a liberal,
like a liberal. But in a good way, again, like they'd hear music and all of a sudden they could recall things. And so it was a good starting off point. And now, through this research, they realized, okay, we can bring back some of the memories of these mice. Now we need to find a way to apply it to humans. So look, this is obviously very good news, but this is just a starting off point. There obviously needs to be more research done and a way to find how this applies to humans.
Yeah, and it's not gonna happen overnight, guys. You gotta do all that research, it's gotta get approved. Then you got to take it to market, and then finally you can. But you have to do all that to make sure it's safe. So, but we on the show have talked about how sometimes marijuana has this effect, where it revives memories that you didn't like, you had totally and utterly forgotten. And weren't you talking about a family member?
Actually, yeah. So I have a family member who's elderly in her 90s. And she's old, so she's suffering from dementia, to be specific, and she also doesn't really communicate much anymore. She doesn't engage in conversations. And so she's losing a lot of weight because she has no appetite. And her doctor, surprisingly, this is a conventional doctor, told my dad, you should get marijuana for her, but edible. Have her take edible marijuana and see if it helps with her appetite. And so he has a source that can access it, and so that source got him a chocolate bar that has marijuana in it, maybe.
And it's legal in California,
it is.
so we're not, again,
I bought some pot for my grandma, okay? So anyway, but this is the most amazing thing, and we didn't even expect it because she ate it, right? A very small dose of it, I think 10 milligrams or something. And her appetite did come back, but more importantly, all of a sudden, she was engaging in conversations about her childhood and when she raised my dad, and just, and it was kind of amazing that it had that effect on her. So look, there's so many benefits to it, and I just wish that people like Jeff Sessions sat back and smoked a doobie and kind of realized the benefits of it. But it's good news for people like my grandma.
So at the end, if you've got something that works, just for God's sake, let people use it. And it's so simple, it's in nature, right? So with nature, #nature, awesome, love it, okay? And then in this case, to be able to, figure this out, perfect it, and then bring it to market so that people's lives can be improved, wonderful. So let's use both, let's use nature, let's use science, but most importantly, be open to knowledge and facts. So we've got new facts, let's adjust instead of saying, nope, we're gonna just keep doing it the old way.
Yep. All right, so we go from good news to terrible news regarding health, and specifically regarding men's health. So let's go to it. Researchers from the University of Jerusalem have looked into sperm count, because there has been a lot of disagreement in the world of science regarding sperm count. And there is one side that agrees that sperm count has gone down considerably for men over the last few decades, and then there are those who deny it. Well, this research done by the Hebrew University of Jerusalem found some pretty shocking evidence that male sperm count is decreasing in certain parts of the world. So sperm count in men from North America, Europe, Australia, and New Zealand declined by 50 to 60% between 1973 and 2011, and that's according to this study from the Hebrew University of Jerusalem. But surprisingly, there was no decline in sperm counts in men from Asia, Africa, and South America, although there was limited data from these areas. Now, just to give you a sense of how this analysis was done, it was a meta-analysis that looked at 42,935 men in 50 different countries. And they didn't study why sperm count has decreased so much, but they did hypothesize about it. So we'll get to that in just a second.
Okay, so that's devastating. And we should redirect all of our resources to figuring out exactly why.
Right.
Those are not small numbers, those are gigantic numbers. But luckily they're not happening everywhere, which actually allows us to be able to study it, I hope, far more effectively. What is happening in these regions of the world that is not happening in the other regions of the world? So if this continues, the results could be way worse. So and there's,
I'm going to show you how bad that it could be if we don't do anything about it. So if the data on sperm counts is extrapolated to its logical conclusion, men will have little or no reproductive capacity from 2060 onwards.
That's humanity challenging. That's you. Every once in a while, politicians will talk about existential threats, and it'll actually be a tiny. I don't want to minimize terrorism, but more people die from falling off of ladders than they do from terrorism. We should absolutely address it, but they will come out and say it's an existential threat. We're all going to pass away. We're all going to disappear. Whatever.
Right.
No. This is an actual existential threat. If we can't make other humans, we don't exist anymore.
So, are we doing anything about the ladders, though? That's crazy. I feel like we haven't really advanced in ladder technology in quite some time. But anyway, we'll talk about that some other day.
Yeah, so if you discount science and you say, no, I don't believe it. I don't believe in all these different things, like whether it's 97% of the world's scientists telling you it's climate change or the age of the Earth. I mean, the list goes on, and you defund science. Well, then we can't figure out what's going wrong, and God help us, or in this case, science help us. Otherwise, we're doomed.
Yeah. So let's talk about what the researchers here hypothesize, because I think that's incredibly important. So they believe that exposure to chemicals could be one of the issues. Obesity rates is another issue that they want to look into as a potential cause for this. And then finally, climate change. And climate change, of course, you deal with extreme weather conditions and things like that.
I like the idea of extreme leather conditions. At some S&M parties, there are extreme leather conditions you have to deal with. Okay.
Anyway,
so tell me about the climate change. Why in this case?
So they don't know exactly why, but extreme weather conditions could play a role. And so they haven't hashed it out. As I mentioned, that's not something that they studied, but these are potential factors that they want to do more studies on so they can figure out what's really happening and why it is that, men in a certain part of the world aren't really suffering from this.
I know it.
And yeah.
Okay.
I honestly, and I'm not an expert, and obviously I'm just guessing, so take this with a grain of salt. I think that the use of chemicals probably has something to do with this.
Yeah, no, that's exactly where I'm going with the speculation. So obviously I want them to actually do tests. I believe in science and figure out what the reality of it is. Climate change to me seems less likely because that seems to hit the world fairly proportionately. So climate change affects Asia, I think, pretty much as it affects North America. So I'd be surprised if that was the answer. Obesity.
I think obesity might have something to do with it as well.
It might, but and maybe that it's both. Maybe it's the chemicals that lead to obesity, whether it's whatever we're consuming, high fructose corn syrup, GMOs. I don't know. I'm not saying it's definitely GMOs. Don't freak out.
Pharmaceutical drugs, that could be a potential.
We take a lot more drugs here than they do in Asia, as an example. But these are all wild conjecture. Let's go. And what do we fund, right?
Right.
And so we're worried about, oh my God, are we going to do funding for a tiny amount of healthcare for transgendered people in the military?
No, forget about that. We're talking about funding to the tune of like $70 billion. That border wall, right? That might be transparent because you've got to make sure you can see those like cartels, trying to toss the 60 pounds of drugs over the wall. You got to see through the wall.
Yeah, the F-35s that waste the money, all the wars that waste the money. Our defense budget is gargantuan, and Trump wants to add $54 billion. I'm not trying to make it political. I'm just saying, if the future of humanity is on the line, we might want to giddy up a little bit and spend more in this direction. Right. Can you imagine if we actually spent money to protect humanity instead of creating more wars? I know, revolutionary thought. Okay, look, if everything else didn't motivate you, your balls are on the line. So get going, your kids are on the line. Everything is. It's not, if these numbers are true, it's not over exaggerating to say that.
You're right. And also, it's not just about sperm count. I imagine that this has a negative impact on the quality of sperm as well. And we do know that, and I don't know if it's because we're more aware of it, but rates of autism have gone up, things like that. So I'm curious whether this stuff is all connected. Again, I'm not the scientist, so I'm curious to see how this all plays out.
Well, I'm from an earlier generation, not affected by this. Quality's A-okay over here.
Okay. Anyway.
Hey, look, I already got my kids. I'm just trying to help millennials here. Yeah. All right, what's next?
Yeah, it's pretty scary. Anyway, all right, let's move on. A council in a Pakistani village has been arrested because of a ruling that they made in regard to a young girl who was raped. Now, this council is not the lawmaking body of this area in Pakistan, but since it's a rural area, they have members who make these ridiculous rulings in regard to people living in that area. And so earlier this month, the council told Mohammed Asfaq, he's 20, to.
It's a funny name. I assume it's Ashfaq, but either way, anyway, sorry.
No,
sorry,
it's a serious story.
Serious story. Okay, keep going.
No, now I can't.
No,
I have to
keep
compose
going,
myself.
keep going.
It's a serious story, though. Like, okay.
I know.
Right.
No, don't worry, I'm gonna rage later.
Okay, so let me just start this over again because I do not want to mess this up. All right. 25 people in a rural village in Pakistan have been arrested due to their ruling in a case involving a teenage girl's rape. So earlier this month, the council told a 20-year-old man to rape a 16-year-old girl after this 20-year-old's family accused the girl's brother of raping his 12-year-old sister, okay? And so it's a hideous story from the get-go, from the very beginning. And instead of carrying out justice against the individual who allegedly raped a 12-year-old girl, they decided to victimize a completely innocent person, okay? So they've victimized this 16-year-old girl. And keep in mind that members of this council who made this ruling were present during the time of the rape, which is disgusting, okay?
But honestly, I think that's why they did it. Because this is not justice. They wanted to get off on it. And so look guys, it is that simple a lot of times. So how many times have people used religion and culture to do things that they want to do anyway? And so you'll have Muslim fundamentalists in Afghanistan somehow justify having sex with young boys, which is definitely supposed to be against their religion. And they'll find a religious excuse for it. You'll find Shia in Iran who will say, oh no, we could do temporary marriages. So you go get married to that hooker for an hour and then you come back, but as long as you pay the mullah, okay? And then you saw the scandal in the Catholic Church. No, this is what God wanted. And you'll damage the church. Don't you complain about it as all those priests are raping all those kids. And so sexually harassing them and molesting them and doing all those terrible things. And in this case, those guys, it's not like they're like, oh, we're so worried about justice. You didn't have to watch it. Why'd you watch it, right?
Yeah, no. Why would you victimize an innocent 16-year-old girl if her brother was accused of doing something wrong? Why don't you go after her brother? And why is it that he's not the person who should face any consequences whatsoever? It's okay. In fact, you retaliate by victimizing the 16-year-old girl. It's disgusting. Now look, this is, again, a rural part of Pakistan, and there are laws in Pakistan against this, which is why this council got arrested for their ruling and what they did to the 16-year-old girl. So those arrested included 24 of the village council's 27 members, and also the 15-year-old boy accused of setting off the chain of events after being accused of raping the younger girl. So, that was the 15-year-old boy who allegedly raped the 12-year-old girl, and that's what kind of led to this chain of events.
It's amazing that they didn't punish him, like the council.
It didn't even cross their minds.
Why? Because the guilty party must be the woman, even though she's the victim, right? And how are we going to address the female victim? By victimizing another female, because God forbid you should ever punish men. And so, look, I know that people say, well, no, it's part of their culture. That's right. Well, that part of the culture sucks. It's hideous, it's barbaric, and you know what you need to do? You need to change it. So if I've hurt your feelings because you think it makes sense to rape innocent girls for the crimes of someone else in their family, okay, then I hurt your feelings, okay? But I can assure you that your crime is way worse than mine. So I do believe in the culture wars. I think culture is monumentally important. So culture is sometimes influenced by religion, sometimes it's influenced by geography, certainly influenced by socioeconomic and political events. And it creates, and boy, is it affected by the media.
Right.
So now these guys are not getting a lot of media. They're stuck in the Stone Ages. And so that's a combination of what they've been doing in there for thousands of years, plus the religion coming in, right? So, but just because you used to do something doesn't make it right. And this is what I can't get through conservatives' heads, whether they're in Pakistan or here, which they're tradition, heritage. I know, but slavery was a tradition. It was a terrible tradition. It was our culture. It was a terrible part of our culture. In Central Asia, they kidnap women and rape them, and then they say, okay, now you have to marry me because I raped you. And her parents come over and convince her that she needs to marry her rapist.
Yep.
So now it came from a nomadic culture where you would go and you would do raids and you would literally rape and pillage. So I understand the genesis of the culture. It doesn't make it right. I understand that was your heritage. Not everything in your heritage is positive. So we have to be open to change wherever you are in the world. In this particular case, so Pakistan's government did the right thing here, because this is how you begin to get the change, which is, no, we're not going to allow you to do that. I don't care how much you tell me it's your culture or your religion. It is illegal and you have to stop it. So beyond that, they should do education programs. And if you say, well, that's just indoctrination. Yes, we indoctrinate people to eat with a fork and knife and spoon. That's a fine indoctrination. We indoctrinate people to be decent to one another. And indoctrinating people not to commit senseless rape against girls who did nothing wrong is a wonderful indoctrination. It's much better than the indoctrination they're doing right now at the local level where they're saying we should do it. Yes, sometimes your culture is wrong. So I know that's an uncomfortable fact, but this is an easy one. And we should all work together in all the different parts of the world to fight for progress and change when we need it. Okay, now we do have a little bit of time left, so I want to do a part of the Ryan Lizza story. Okay, so I'm just going to do a part because it's such a great part. So okay, so give me, let's see the normal background here. Okay, and I'll start it. Okay. So Anthony Scaramucci last night puts out a tweet about how Reince Priebus is a leaker. That's what he seems to insinuate, and saying that he's going to report him for felony crime to the FBI and Justice Department. Scaramucci's the White House communications director. Reince Priebus is the chief of staff. This is unprecedented within the same administration. He later deletes the tweet in a panic, and then he says, no, I didn't mean that it was Reince. Then he goes on CNN for half an hour and says the fish rots from the head down and it's not me and the president, clearly indicating it's Reince, okay? But now that's settled because Ryan Lizza just came out with an article explaining that Scaramucci did call him last night and confirmed that he was talking about Reince Priebus. The knucklehead did it on the record. Oh no, but okay, so.
Oh, it's so good though. I'm so glad he did it on the record because there are quotes in Ryan Lizza's piece that will never be forgotten.
So I want to concentrate on the Steve Bannon part here because the Reince part has been talked about a lot. And so I don't know if he forgot to say it's off the record or he was just like, he once famously said, I like to stab people from the front. Well, we've got some front stabbing here. So here's what Steve Bannon is, the chief advisor to the president who just hired Scaramucci. He says, I'm not Steve Bannon. I'm not trying to suck my own cock. What?
Communications director.
That's the communications director for the White House.
Oh, it's so good.
Oh my God. And then he said, I'm not trying to build my own brand off the fucking strength of the president. I'm here to serve the country. Wow. So the White House is in an open state of warfare with itself.
Yes.
Everybody hates everybody else at the White House. The management incompetence here is record-breaking. No one has ever been this incompetent as a manager, at least in the public sphere. So he's like, okay, I'm gonna, this Trump now, I'm gonna hire a bunch of you guys, okay? Now, Scaramucci in the CNN interview said about him and Reince, we're like Cain and Abel. One of them killed the other one, and he said that on TV. Anyway, so the reason for the bad blood in the background is that Scaramucci sold his financial company because he thought he was going in the Trump White House. And Reince Priebus prevented that earlier on in the beginning of the administration. So this is like Sopranos level stuff. So yeah, I guess in Scaramucci's words, he cock-blocked him, okay? And then, so Scaramucci's like, what the hell, I sold my company and I'm out here. And so finally Trump goes, I'm gonna hire Scaramucci to do communications. Reince Priebus, who apparently was right about this, is like, that's a really bad idea.
Right, and that's the reason why Sean Spicer resigned.
So he can't block him. So Scaramucci comes in, Spicer goes, this is outrageous, so I'm leaving. Spicer was connected to Reince Priebus. And Scaramucci comes out and he's just like, he's got a couple of shivs. He's like, so Reince Priebus, oh wait, hold on a second, Steve Bannon. I don't suck my own cock like you do.
Or try to. Okay. Try is the important word there. No, but okay, so that was great. And the quotes that come from Ryan Lizza's piece are amazing, and you should read the entire piece. But to me, the most interesting component was the fact that Scaramucci called Ryan Lizza to understand who the source was from the White House who let Lizza know that Trump had a meeting with Sean Hannity and a bunch of other goons, right? And so Scaramucci's freaking out. He's like, who told you that? Who told you that? I need to know, I need to know. I'm gonna fire everyone in the communications department unless you tell me who it is. And Ryan Lizza's like, I'm not telling you what my source is, dude. Like that's not gonna stop me from protecting my source.
Okay, right before he sent the now infamous tweet about Reince Priebus, Scaramucci tells Lizza, yeah, let me go though, because I gotta start tweeting some shit to make this guy crazy.
Oh my God, what is going on?
Okay, so when, let me see here, I guess this is, then Scaramucci says, what I want to do is I want to fucking kill all the leakers. I want to get the president's agenda on track so we can succeed for the American people.
Communications director. I mean, wow.
I don't have enough hands for the facepalm you have to do for this interview. Like, what? Okay, but the Bannon lines I think are the best ones. All right, so these are the clowns that are now in charge of our country. So this is all fun and games because they're all just stabbing one another. But these guys make decisions that affect everyone's lives, sometimes life and death decisions. You trust them to make the right decisions? Look at how grotesquely incompetent they are. Yeah. These buffoons are now in charge of the most powerful military in the world and the biggest government. And I fear for us all. I fear for the planet with these guys in charge.
It's enough to scare a coochie.
Okay. All right, guys, we love you. We'll see you guys tomorrow. Bye-bye.